What's up, guys? So I thought I would do a pretty fun video here. Uh, like I said, I'm kind of getting reacclimated with this side of the oligarchy. I would say organized sports is one component and media is another. They both fall under media, if I'm being honest. But anyway, we will be covering sports on the other channel. But I wanted to go into some more things here. I wanted to cover this before because I'm still seeing people that should know better saying how Seven's going to be the most, Scream 7 is going to be the most profitable in the franchise and it's the best one and all these different things. So I'm just using math, stats, and metrics, things that typically drive people insane when they have, for whatever reason, emotional bias to a movie. But anyway, this is one that I love math, so this really has not much to do with the franchise, more so to do with the math part. Anyway, unwatchable garbage is how I would describe Seven. Unfortunately, I'm being objective here. This is from the perspective of the box office. So, for perfection, it's really hard. It's not arguable. And let's go to the numbers. So if you go to Scream here, you see that it did 173 million, right? So it's already the greatest. Seven could pass it. If it does, maybe we change the list. More importantly, on a $15 million budget, it did it 11.5, meaning budget to box office. In horror movies, and I think in movies in general, the rule's 2.8x. You see how Scream 4 did 2.4. For them to get a sequel, they would have needed roughly, and I mean, they could have been off 100,000. And even that wouldn't have been quite enough. That's 2.5. They really would have needed closer to about 120-ish, which would have been a 3x. But between 1 and 120 would have been a failure, but might have got them that quicker sequel. 3 4x'd and was, by the way, considered a failure. You look at the reviews, and its reason it took 11 years to get another sequel. Same with 4 to 5. You can't just look at the money made. Look at Black Adam. So anyway, I think it's inarguable that one belongs in first. And then for second place, it gets interesting because you have Scream 2, higher budget, but it did 7.2. So the only one that really has a chance of arguing with Scream 2 would be 5 or 6. 5 because of the ROI, 6 because of just the money it pulled in. I'm going to just use my own discretion here. You guys can determine what's more important: return on investment, keeping legs in the franchise, or just how much money you make. I would wager to say, in second place, I don't think it could be 2, to be quite honest. I mean, 2 did 7.2x. It has to be 2. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. So 2 is fine. For third place is where I'm not sure now. This part, and I know these tiers don't really match. This is just the box office. We're actually separately going to cover where I believe the movies rank as far as just how good they are. And also, if where they leave the franchise. That's very important. If you watch an episodic TV show, if an episode leaves off on a season really, really bad and like important people die or whatever, and nobody really cares about the next season, that should affect, in my opinion, the legs of the movie. So next, we're tossed between 5 and 6. And the reason, even though I think 5 is a better movie, the reason I'm going to put 6 here is kind of simple. 6 didn't add much. Actually, they removed Nev Campbell. And while the ratio isn't as good as 5, 4.8 is still good. They didn't go nuts on the budget. They increased it by 11, which is almost the same as from 1 to 2. But as you can see, with 1 to 2, it actually dropped off a little bit. Basically, a tie. And then 3, they went way up in the budget, and you see that was kind of where things went south. And you almost see a repeat here with Scream 6 and 7, but we'll get into that. And of course 4 is just in the middle. It's just like, it's going to be the worst one until, well, 7's the worst one, but we'll get into that. Anyway, so yeah, it's interesting. The reason I don't have 3, I can't put 3 ahead of 6 because A, it did less money, and it did less money on a lower budget. So there's no way I could put 3 ahead of 6. But 3 ahead of 5, I could see that argument. I just think when you have that budget, and again, 5 came back, you can argue they had the nostalgia working for them, but you can also argue it was almost like a new franchise. That's the reason that I have to put 5 ahead of 3. I think it did very well for kind of getting it got back to the roots in every way possible. You know, I could even argue again 5 like here maybe, just because again, when you have a bigger budget, you're going to make more money. It's just not fair. It's like me going out there with $20 and someone else going out there with 2,000. Who's going to make more money on their film? You know, more likely than not. So, I think I go Scream 2, 6, 5. I think that's our order. It's literally the box office order. The only thing I did was I don't have Scream 6, or I'm sorry, Scream 3 ahead of 5 because, again, of the box office. But we do have to put that one next. And the reason that one goes next is simple, because it did 4X. It did 160. And it was a fucking slop of a movie. Like, 7 can't argue. The one thing 7 can't argue, yes, they had a lot of crap that happened. But once the crap happened, Nev, Williamson, they really had, like, all the creative freedom. And then they let the writers, and then they okayed it, you know. So, like, there was no studio meddling with 7. So I can't give 7 the same, you know, like 3 was completely changed to the point where they're joking about it in the movie. 7, that wasn't the case. All they referenced was how, you know, basically 6 was garbage because Sydney wasn't in it. So while things were changed, we were told that the problems were gone. So, like, unlike these other ones where there were problems that riddled the production, here we were told, no, the problem childs are gone. We got Nev back. We got Stu. It's going to be great. They used AI. I might do one final, like, little thing on just because I like to get into the weeds more than just who killed who or whatever. I would like to go into just the deceptive the creative. I won't even say deceptive, but the creative marketing and how the marketing. I think I'm not a movie nerd, but this might be the best case I've ever seen of the worst movie that does well 100% because of marketing and nothing to do with the movie. Where basically, I genuinely think they could have just introduced, like, breakdancing aliens and whatever to this movie, and it would have been the same. The same thing we saw. Opening weekend, everyone turned out, and then nobody wanted to subject their families like normal. Hey, gotta show the wife, gotta show the kids, gotta show whoever. I gotta bring the fucking dog to this one. And nobody wanted to subject anybody to it. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is unwatchable garbage goes here. Scream 4 is in last place. That goes without saying. But since they gave me 6, I don't feel like adding a 7th column, and it's more fun to just have 7 in last place. It might seem like I just hate 7. It's not that. I take umbrage with people that don't understand basic math. Okay? So we're going to get back to the basic math. And I kind of just used it. Okay, 11x here is just insane, right? Scream 2 again, 8x, insane. And both, by the way, are going to finish with a higher gross. So this is my box office. I'm going to get back to this. And just so you know, this is where I think the gross is going to finish on these movies. In case you weren't sure. That's right. I think there's a very, very good chance that Scream 7 finishes in 4th place. 4 out of 7. Bottom 3. And I could be wrong, but that's the gross, with everybody saying this is the greatest one ever, right? So, being generous ignoring everything else. I just ignoring the fact that they cooked the franchise. I mean, again, instead of Ghostface, I don't know why they didn't just put Sydney on the front here, but it just shows how little they care about the actual people in this franchise. And yeah, it's probably going to finish fourth, I think. Out of seven here. This would just go like here, I guess. But yeah, and we can look at this to see. Okay. So 1 and 2, 173, 172, and 6 is at 169. Scream 7 right now is at 151 as of, I think, Tuesday's results. We're looking at about a million for Wednesday and Thursday, 153, and 5 to 7 million this weekend. So we'll say 160. Now, I looked at the week 3 for Scream 6, and it dropped off pretty hard. It didn't drop off. Now that includes the weekend. That includes the Friday, Saturday, Sunday that I already covered. So 160 for the week 3 weekend, and then obviously we're going to have week 3, which will probably bump it up to, I don't know, we're not even going to get a million a day. We'll say 163 and a half, something like that. 163, we'll say. And those are not crazy estimates. It's really going in line with what 6 did, only 7's dropping off at a higher rate. So after week 3, we're going to be at 163. Now, week 4, Scream 6 did about 5 million. So that would put 7 at 168-ish with 2 more weeks to go. Sounds like it'll easily pass 6. And maybe it does, 168. And again, I'm just going off of already precedented numbers. And I'm not even accounting for the fact that Scream 7's dropping like a rock. I'm accounting for like a regular drop. So even though I predicted it was going to drop further, but 168, let's say week 5 gives it 2 million. Okay, it's going to edge out 6. And that the producers, that they're going to ignore the budget, they're going to ignore everything and say, because they beat them by a million or whatever, thank God we got rid of those awful Carpenter sisters and brought back Neve Campbell and paid her twice as much and gave her executive producer credits and let her basically hijack the franchise as a grandmother. But however they spin that, they might pass 6. I will concede that. They're not passing 2. Just not happening. Even if they run it to 170, the final week, they're not doing one in week 6, which is basically where you're talking about dribs and drabs. They're not doing 3 million. And I don't think they're passing 2. And then again, even if we say they pass 6, and gosh, even if they pass 2, which they're not, I speculated they were going to be between 150 and 160. I got crucified for that. People just laughed at me, and that's fine. But it was a lot closer than these 200 by week 3 estimates, I'll say that. And it's probably going to finish a smidge higher than the 160s. So, maybe past the Scream 6, but instead of a 4... So we go to the ROI, just to hit 4X, which would be Scream 3 territory, we would need 180. That's not happening. We are going to get, obviously, 160. I don't think we get 175. I really don't. So I think we're looking at about a 3.7-ish, a 3.8, which isn't going to be the worst thing in the world. I'd say 3.7. It'll get them a sequel. But when you really zoom out and look at this, you really can't. And again, there's people who are going to look at this now and be like, oh, it's 2 weeks, it's at 150. It's going to double. They don't understand how the box office works. I don't think you can look at this and honestly say Scream 7 helped the franchise. So yeah, and then we just move over, and this certainly doesn't help. 78, 83, 45% for, again, this was coming off like 2 of the greatest horror movies of all time, and then you get 3, and it still gets 45. 61 on Scream 4, 76, and then 32%. Lowest from critics, lowest from people. So it's not like you can say it's the critics versus the casual people. It's everybody. The only people that contributed to this movie's success are literally the ones that were, in my opinion, tricked. And if they weren't, they would have returned. We would have saw the same thing we saw with every other Scream, about a 50% drop off, not a... It's funny. We literally had a boycott because of things behind the movie. And then people were like, no, we're going to have a reverse boycott. And then people said, yeah, let's just boycott this movie because it sucks. So, like, if people just were normal and didn't let politics affect things, this movie wouldn't have done well at all, because you wouldn't have had, like, the reverse boycott. You would just have people... The most organic boycott of all time. You don't watch something because it deeply offends you. Anyway, so yeah, that's my opinion here. I think the highest we can put... And by the way, this is... These aren't my phrases. So this is like where AI would consider this. So AI would consider this as surprisingly decent. A far cry from greatest in franchise history. And I still think this is what we're going to see. Maybe I'm wrong. Now let's get down to the movies themselves. Again, I think in most cases, the ROI is the best way to determine these movies. I don't know why. It just seems... The ROI seems to always line up best with, like, the people. So, like, if you look at the greatest ROIs, they typically have the best reviews. It's not like, even if it had a good budget, like 3. Not always, but the exception here would be Scream 4. But 4 is not really an exception because I told you 7 was worse than 4. But if you look, I'm surprised 6 has better reviews than 5. I guess I'm in the minority there. I kind of like look at 2 movies and I'm like, okay, what did this one do better? And when I break down the opening, I think 5 has a better opening. When I break down the character development, I think 5 has more characters that are developed. I think 5 has a slightly better mystery factor. Like, everything that's important about these movies, not being horrible writing is another thing. I think 6 is much worsely written. So when people say 6 is better than 5, I'd like a reason. It's a little more fun. And then people say 7 is better than 6 and 5. And I'm like, how? Can you really say the opening to 7 is better than 5? Can you really say the reveal's better? Can you say the writing's better? The cinematography? So yeah, I find that stuff interesting. I get, different strokes for different folks. But to me, when you have movies that are very similar, and then, like, one just is objectively better, again, like, it'd be like saying, like, I think Scream and Scream 3 are really, really close, but I edge Scream 3, because of the opening, or something stupid like that. It's like, when one movie is objectively better in one or more regards, I don't know how people can just rate others higher. Again, it's their opinion, but I think a lot of it's fear, too. A lot of people came out after 6 and they said the writing was terrible, it was a bad movie, and I agreed. I conceded that the box office was, is always going to reign supreme. But the movie was not that good. I had it as actually the worst or second worst when it came out. Then 7 came out, and I immediately was like, okay, this cannot be the worst. And it made me appreciate almost every other movie that much more. But anyway, I know this is kind of like 3 different videos. I really wanted to cover the box office for the people that are doubling down that how can this be... Because I used the word bomb, and okay, fine, it's not a bomb. What I will say is the movie is a bomb. The marketing was lightning in a bottle. The marketing was a nuclear bomb of success. And the movie was just an atomic bomb of failure, if that makes you guys feel better. And even from a box office perspective, 3.7x, which is where I think it's going to finish, with the highest budget in the history of the franchise, with the marketing, I think it's fair to say that's underwhelming. And I even think it's fair to say, if not for the marketing, this movie's a bomb. I mean, you just look at the opening. But I wanted to rank them all to kind of put it in perspective. Because my personal order, just so you know, has changed. Not really changed, but I'm not a fan of, like, the daylight horror. And I thought Holly and Derek sucked. So 2 is not my second favorite. My second favorite, and I think it's because it's the closest to just what I enjoy in these movies. My personal order here, so you can see the box office order, right? So you can see I'm being fair. And just to be extra fair, just in case this happens, right? Now, if you look at my actual order, I like Scream 2 as my second favorite. I'm sorry, Scream, the second Scream. It's so stupid. Uh, I just like it. I like it more than 2 because even though I love Mickey and Cotton and I like the story, I think they did such a good job of A, I think it's the best opening since Drew Barrymore. I think Tara did an amazing job. They introduced new characters and the other characters for in the only movie I think where they were able to balance the new and the old. Every other one they tried, and the old wind up hijacking the new. In third place, I would put 2. I do like 2. And then in fourth place, it's always really tough. But in fourth place, because of it's a collective now, is 6. And this is what I mean about like legs. I thought 6 was trash. But because 7 came out and just like ditched the story and ruined it, in my opinion, I would like to see a follow up on 6, 5, 6, 7. So, like, that's the reason I would rewatch 6 now, whereas before it would have been like this, you know? So it's always changing, you know? It would have been something like this before, or even something like this, you know? But yeah, I really like 6, and I'm sorry, 2. And as a result, 6 is not as bad as, and it was one I rewatched and admitted I was actually wrong about a few things where I was like, oh, this scene does make sense. This scene isn't as stupid as I thought. The one with Quinn in the bedroom actually makes a lot of sense. Everything she says makes perfect sense for somebody that is on the face with their compadre or their accomplice. It really does. Even the guy sneaking up on her and her not knowing he's there makes sense if you think about it. If you think about how that movie unfolded, the stupid Ethan thing on the subway made no sense, and the reveal sucked. So there's still horrible writing, but at least there are some parts that I can say, oh, actually, that's not just a reason to trick the audience, which they did do, but not as bad. And then I would go probably 4 then 3, just because at least 4. People say 4 feels the least like a Scream movie. I think 3 does, because 3 actually feels like Stab, which it's supposed to be. Again, I don't like daylight horror. 4 at least is like the ambiance is there. You got the return to Woodsboro. I thought Kirby was fun. And then just because I can't have it there, that would be my this is probably the order. My Scream movies in order. I'd probably like the first, then the second. I'm sorry, the first. It was the second for the longest time. That's why I keep saying that. And depending on my mood, to be quite honest, these can flip. I think there's a lot of people like that. The only non-negotiables for me are the first one and the last one. Anything in the middle. There are times where you might see something as crazy as like this, maybe. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. There's people that'll probably move their second favorite to their fifth. But really, Scream 2 is just, it's really good. And just lately, I like the vibe of 5 better. And maybe it's just because they actually brought the nostalgia. Again, I enjoyed the new characters. And then we never really got to see them again. So maybe it's just wanting to see a follow-up. So this is my order of right now. If you're like, okay, marathon the movies, I would hope that I would get ill or sick or some kind of major event would happen by the time 4 concluded. And that would be fine. But again, just to show like I'm not being, in my opinion, biased here. My box office rankings aren't really at all in line with where I put these movies. Here are the box office rankings again, and as you can see, that's by no means my favorites. I like 5 a lot more than 6. I like 5 a hell of a lot more than 7. I like 3 and 4. But yeah, you guys can let me know what you think. I don't have the greatest editing skills. I wish I did, or I can make these really fun and where I'm not just dragging and dropping like a caveman here, but and literally they They're the cavemen were the inventors of the old drag and drop tactic. If you know, you know. But no, I think this is a fair assessment of the box office. And if I really wanted to be a dick and play a devil's advocate, I would do something like this. I really would. Maybe even this. And I would make the argument that at least Scream 3 4X'd, and if you can't 4X on a near $50 million budget, it's a failure. But I'm not going to do that. But I think this is something we're going to see, and at best for Scream 7 this. If you consider that a resounding success, they finally get Matthew Lillard. Technically, he's in the movie. At least he was more, people thought he was when they tuned in, and he is in the movie. But if you consider this like the greatest, success and proof that the Carpenter sisters are worthless, and you needed Neve Campbell, and all these different things, and you needed the nostalgia, and the movie was just so great, then yeah, maybe that's your perspective, but I can't see the argument. I can't see you making the argument without conceding that 6 was also amazing. Like, I try and be consistent, right? So I try and say I don't think 6 was that good, but I'm not going to argue with the numbers. We do have people. Again, you got that real shift clown. I think he's controlled opposition, honestly, because he comes out like this dude that is against the quote snowflakes, but all the guy does is delete all the 90% of the comments that call him out on hypocrisy, or when it's pointed out, dude, all you do is attack Jenna Barrera. I'm sorry, mixing the two up. Jenna attack Melissa Barrera like you're in love with the two. No matter what it is, he brings these two up, and the guy just worships at the shrine of Neve Campbell, and he just completely ignored the box office. He even said, I don't want to hear about the box office. Box office doesn't mean anything. Brought up all these examples about why they don't mean anything. And then within 24 hours of 7 coming out, dude's like, see, I told you so. It's better than 6. And now it's not even going to pass 6. And the dude's already backpedaling, but it's fine. He's not the only one, but he's one of the... Watch out for those kind of people, because those are the ones that pretend to be these objective people, and they're really not. They're the worst ones, actually, because at least with the other guys, okay, the dead meat guys and stuff, these people are paid, or they're just going to be PC. They're going to keep it fun. No matter how bad a movie is in a franchise, they're not going to honestly tell you that. They're not going to tell you about the box office. They're just going to tell you, even if it hurt their soul to watch, they're going to say something like they enjoyed it and it wasn't bad. So anyway, I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know. I'm more curious, you can tell me until you're blue in the face that this movie wasn't a failure after the first 48 hours, but I'm more curious to hear your numbers. No, your 167 million is way off, and here's why. Or no, they're going to do 10 million this weekend, you schmuck. Just be honest. I'm from Jersey. I can take it. But when people are just saying it's a success and they're hitting me with Rotten Tomatoes quotes, even though the Rotten Tomatoes quotes aren't too good, but just quotes from BuzzFeed or whatever saying, hey, most successful since this, or 150 million. I don't care, because I have a feeling where it's going to finish, and right here is about where I have it finishing. So yeah, let me know what you think. And I'm curious if maybe I'm doing the numbers wrong. Maybe I am underestimating the power of a week 3, week 4 surge. Maybe I'm underestimating Friday the 13th, and then people are just going to fly in there and because it's Friday the 13th and watch the crap out of Scream 7. Maybe I'm wrong, So you guys can let me know. I'm trying to kind of go into, what you guys think will happen here, and where this leaves the 8th movie, which nobody has gone into because nobody has an answer. By the way, Kevin Williamson has left. You don't leave a franchise that you directed after it's the most successful sequel ever. You leave because by the skin of your teeth, by a pubic hair, you had a movie that was good enough to secure a sequel because of some very fortuitous events. So I think with a new director, it's going to be amazing. Because I think Williamson, I don't want to say one hit wonder because he did a lot of great things, but I think he's a 1 decade wonder. Like this guy killed it in the 90s with like all of his great movies, and it's like he hasn't evolved with the times, I feel like. Because I gave him the benefit of the doubt in 5 because he was like a consultant on the movie, I think. I think. I think he was part of 5. And then I really gave him the benefit of the doubt in 6 because they were doing all this stuff, moving stuff around. And again, I think he wasn't like the actual writer. They were like, oh, he's consulting. So I'm like, fine. I won't. I did say he should not have let some of this bullshit writing get through, but fine. But this is 3 movies in a row now that we're supposed to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because, oh, this wasn't under his scope. This wasn't under his purview. This one stepped on his toes. You have Nev Campbell and Kevin Williamson together. There ain't nobody telling them what to do. So I think it's high time he left. And hopefully Nev Campbell's right behind him. And once that happens, then I will make my prediction of Scream 8 probably being the greatest box office sequel since the original. So, well, sequel in general. So yeah, if they stick to the old, they're going to be cooked. So far, they got rid of some of the old with Williamson. Great choice, in my opinion. And I think some of these actors, really 2 is all we have to go next. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'll be honest, even I was surprised to see that they're basically under the millions in their weekday numbers, and their weekend numbers are just down crazy, down 90% from the opening. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I know this seems like I just want to bash this movie. It's not that. I've just never seen a movie where collectively so many people have agreed to spit in the face of math, spit in the face of production costs, spit in the face of what holds a franchise together, and spit in the face of the overwhelming reviews. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and maybe this put it in a little bit better perspective as to why I'm not seeing this amazing record-breaking movie. You can say any movie broke a record. I'm sure Scream 4 was the movie that took them past 750,000 or 750 million, in the box office. It doesn't make it it doesn't make it the reason that, Scream's successful. So, yeah. Tell me what you guys think.